Everyone, and welcome to the Level Up Your Recruiting Strategy with Virtual Hiring event. I'm Lauren from the RPOA. I'm going to wait just a couple of seconds to let some folks come in here. Okay, great. Well, let's get started. Like I said, my name is Lauren, and I am the Marketing and Communications Director for the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association. And I am so excited to be here with Joe from Brazen. A little bit about Joe. Joe serves as the VP of Brazen and is located in Washington, D.C., as he said in the chat. Joe is the host of a popular talent acquisition video series, Talent Acquisition Talks, as well as a co-host of the only podcast, Talent on the Rise, that gives chief talent officers and people a platform to share advice on how to build a successful and fulfilling career in talent acquisition. He is a passionate marketer at Brazen, which is a virtual event platform. Joe excels at working at the intersection of marketing and recruiting. He believes that marketing and recruiting are not that much different and are very similar. So thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Lauren, thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you, RPOA, for inviting me to come speak today. I'm super excited about this topic, and I'm really passionate about it too. I think that, just to add on a little bit to my background, that Lauren was so nice to talk about, but I started my career on the agency side, working for a marketing agency. And very early on during that experience, it was really cool when we were doing these awesome videos for the marketers so that they could attract prospects and customers. And this other group within the organizations we were working with, the recruiting teams, the employer branders, the recruitment marketers, the recruiters were saying, hey, we want to do the same things. And so very early in my career, I got a chance to start to work with talent acquisition professionals on creating videos, content, writing copy and messaging for career sites and job recs. So, recruiting is definitely one of my passions. Even though I am a marketer, I just love being in this space. So, what I'm going to be talking about here today is, as Lauren mentioned, level up your recruiting strategy with virtual hiring events. I think that in the past 12 to 14 months, virtual events became a must-have overnight. But Brazen has been doing virtual events. We've been in the virtual event space for 8+ years. And so we've had clients that have been using virtual for many, many years to stay connected, to get engaged, to open up and increase their geographic footprint, to help them bring in top talent. And so today's presentation, we're going to go into talking about how virtual events, some best practices around how your organization or around how your RPO can help the organizations you work with better connect with top talent using virtual hiring events. So if we jump ahead a couple slides here, done the introduction. I think, housekeeping, we will carve out some time at the end to answer questions. So if you do have questions, you can throw them into the question panel, and Lauren and I will address those at the end. We've got about 25 minutes before we get to those questions. So the agenda today, so I gave kind of a high level overview of what we'll be talking about. The one thing I didn't mention is this concept of hybrid recruiting. And at Brazen, we've been hearing from our customers, from our community, because we're very much tapped into the broader talent attraction community. Everybody's asking right now, like, okay, there was this like urgency to go virtual when the pandemic hit 14 months ago, but as the world opens back up, like, what is this thing called hybrid recruiting? And so Brazen's done some really, I think, great research talking to recruiters, talent attraction professionals, employer branders, recruitment marketers, to ask them like what they see as the future. And we kind of use that as a little bit of a benchmark about where everybody's going. So we're going to talk about that research. Like I mentioned, we'll talk through the best practices of using virtual hiring events, whether you're an RPO or an actual employer trying to connect with talent. And then real quickly, I'll touch briefly upon, from a very biased opinion, what you should be looking for in a virtual hiring event platform. And then hopefully leave some time for questions, all in 23 minutes. So let's jump right in. So the research. So if we jump to the next slide, so high level findings. Again, we actually went out and we researched almost 300 talent acquisition professionals, and we asked them questions like, what does hiring look like for 2021, the rest of the year? How much are you going to be using, or are you going to be using virtual even when there is an option to do in-person events? And then if yes, to what degree are you going to use virtual? What degree are you going to use in person? The answers to those questions are here. So as many of you are probably experiencing and reading in the news, like hiring is on the rise, it's exploding. But I think we all are finding very quickly that the issue isn't that we've got all of these open positions, but that there isn't a supply of candidates to fill those positions. So we're kind of back to where we were before the pandemic hit, in this kind of candidate-driven market. The war for talent is as fierce as it's ever been. So what are recruiters saying though, as far as like the solutions, the strategies that they're going to use to continue to connect with talent or try to find that really great talent? Well, 96% of TA leaders are saying that virtual recruiting is here to stay, even beyond the point at which in-person is feasible once again. Then the question becomes, okay, we keep hearing this word, hybrid recruiting. It's trending, it's top of people's minds. So we asked, like, to what degree will you continue to use virtual? And 83% said that 50% or more of their events will remain virtual. And so that could be anywhere from 50% to 100%. But the majority of TA leaders are saying, 83% are saying that at least half of their events will remain virtual. So, from this, conversation here, it does appear that virtual will continue to remain a staple in folks' talent acquisition strategies. And the reasons I think might be apparent, but we asked about like what are the reasons? What is the benefit that you are getting from virtual hiring events? And here's 5 of the top ones. So 83% said that it's more convenient for the candidates, the job seekers. 80% says it saves them time and money. You think about it like if you're a recruiting team, a campus recruiter, experienced hire, whatever, and you've got to travel to go meet with candidates or bring candidates to you, there's a real hard cost to that. Time, money, the swag that you bring to in-person events, whatever it may be. So there's a cost savings there. It removes geographic restrictions. We'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second, but as remote work becomes more prevalent, you're going to have to parallel that remote worker with a virtual strategy. Virtual events are a great way to do that. It opens up your reach. And again, if you're trying to fight and find talent for your open recs and you're having a hard time and you've only been looking in kind of that same geographic area that you've always been looking, what better way to like open up your options than by going virtual and extending that reach. Another one here, 55% saying it supports their DEI hiring efforts. I'm actually speaking tomorrow at the Candies. Some of you may be familiar with the talent board, and we're speaking with one of our clients, Lockheed Martin, on exactly this topic, on DEI hiring, how to use virtual events to connect with all of these different communities, whether it's the LGBTQ plus, pride community, whether it's Black engineers, women in technology. Just a great way to help you diversify your pipeline, and ultimately with the goal of bringing in more in different perspectives to help you add value to the organization. And then lastly, I think that we see and hear in the news all the time now about how organizations, Fortune 500 companies, universities just across the board are really thinking about, how can I reduce my carbon footprint? And what better way to do that than to not have to have your people travel, fly all over, print off all of those marketing materials that you bring to an in-person event, and then have everyone throw it away and not get recycled. So a bunch of different factors here that for why folks are continuing with virtual. I think that this more or less is a summary of what I just mentioned. Again, I just would reiterate point number 2 here, which is that this virtual or hybrid event strategy helps you connect with candidates in a remote world. Again, everybody's been working remotely over the past year. Some companies are going back in person 100% of the time. A lot more companies still haven't figured it out, but in all of the research that Brazen's been doing and what we're hearing is that the increase from before the pandemic to now, after the pandemic, like remote work is just much more going to be much more ubiquitous within the workforce. And so you will have to have a way to connect with, a remote employee, and virtual events are a great way to do that. So those are some of the key takeaways from the research. Now let's jump into some of the best practices that we have for hosting these virtual events. And so if you're an RPO or you're an employer and you're kind of thinking about like, is this something that I want to add to my mix? Or maybe it's something that you've already added to your mix, your strategy. It's one of the strategies that you do use. Let's talk through some ways that you can get the most out of those virtual hiring events. So number one part of my bio that I didn't send over to Lauren is that I spent 10 years in the lovely state of Iowa. And there's a famous movie, Field of Dreams, that actually takes place in Iowa, or was filmed in Iowa. And one of the lines from Field of Dreams, actually, Lauren, if you go back to the promotion slide, one of the lines in Field of Dreams is, if you build it, they will come. Maybe some of you are familiar with the movie, familiar with that famous quote. Unfortunately, for virtual events, just because you build the event doesn't mean that they'll come. And so, I think promotion is definitely one of the most important points, and something that we encourage all of our customers to really think about as they're planning for their virtual event, which is, how am I going to get candidates to the event that I'm going to engage with, chat with, talk with, assess, and qualify. And I think that one way is like Brazen does work with a few RPOs that help support the kind of the efforts to drive candidates to virtual events, which is always an absolute great situation for the end customer of ours. We also work very closely and actually recommend that folks think about, like, number one, where are your candidates? Are they on social media? Are they on LinkedIn? Or are they maybe an entry level position, a Gen Z, a millennial that you're hiring for, and therefore they spend most of their time on something like a TikTok, an Instagram, a Snapchat. And some of our kind of like best in class clients are finding ways to stand out through those channels, whether it's social media, through email, on the career site, that maybe their competitors aren't doing. But at the end of the day, promotion is so important to driving folks, candidates to your virtual events, and thinking about like, where do my candidates hang out, and then putting together the appropriate messaging and promotional materials to connect with them through those different channels. The last thing I'll add here on promotion is just the concept of a virtual event. Like when I mentioned messaging, how important the message is through these different channels of promotion. If you think about like comparing reaching out to a candidate on LinkedIn and just saying, hey, we've got this job opening, come apply or submit your resume versus, hey, like we are gonna have our recruiting team and our hiring managers attending this virtual event. We think that you would be a great fit for the role that we have open, but our team is here to talk to you, to answer questions that you might have. Like human to human interaction goes a long way, and we always see a huge increase in conversions just by using the virtual event and using the fact that you're bringing and putting your people forward as a great kind of draw for those candidates. So promotions, number one. Number two, okay, so now we're like getting, oh, yep. We're getting into some of the details here. So in the booth experience, again, whichever platform you're using, we have found that the teams that actually within the event experience segment out their booths by the different types of jobs. Even when a candidate comes to your virtual event, and even when they're like, they're ready to like learn more about your company, ask questions, check out your videos, those, really awesome employee story videos that you've created and added to your virtual event. At the end of the day, their navigational system is going to be based on the type of job. And so you can see here, this is an example of a company, a healthcare company, that each of their booths are really labeled and identified by the type of job that they're hiring for. And so if you're using a virtual event to actually do hiring for specific jobs, and not every virtual event does need to be about jobs, but when it is, make sure you lead with that information. It helps those candidates navigate the events, get into the booths, and check out the information that's specific and relevant and personalized for them. And plus your team will likely, have expertise. Your recruiting team will have expertise, or your hiring manager's expertise in each of these different roles. And you never want that mismatch to happen. So this is a great way to make sure that everybody's matched up correctly. So number 3 here is send reminder emails. And this might sound obvious, but we see, and I've seen all too many times, whether it's on the recruiting for promoting and recruiting for a virtual event, or marketing for a webinar like we're doing here today. It's great when someone signs up, like you've probably invested a lot of time, energy, money through all these different channels that we've talked about to get someone to register for your event, for your webinar, whatever it may be. But that it doesn't end there. In my experience, both working with our clients, as well as my experience as a veteran marketer, you have to continuously nurture those registrants all the way up into the moment of the event. Remind them that the event is happening. Certainly make sure you provide options for them to get it on their calendars, and then send those reminder emails that remind them to come attend the event when it's taking place. And you can just see here's like an example of an email. Again, not again, but within the Brazen platform, we send these out automatically. But you can see here, like this email says, we're starting the event in 2 hours, and the clients that do these, we see a boost in the attendance rate of those virtual events. So number 4, and I'm definitely going to lose track. I didn't number these, but I think we're on 4. So number 4 is enhance your employer brand. So, it's, I think, all too easy or common to associate virtual events with a Zoom call. And I think that that's the wrong way to think about it. And using Zoom, they're like, we use Zoom at Brazen all the time for meetings, for webinars. But I think that the really the greatest opportunity for you as an employer in a virtual event is to enhance and highlight what makes your brand great. Like, why should people come work for you? Why is it a great place to work? What do other people have to say? And so making sure that you are leveraging the virtual event experience to promote what makes you great. I think that a lot of companies these days are also attending multi-company virtual events or multi-company virtual career fairs. I'm sure many of you here today have attended those. And so in that case, your virtual booth is being assessed by the candidates amongst a bunch of other companies. And so you really have to do your best to showcase. And so the great thing about a virtual event is a lot of times it's a way for you to get more mileage out of that amazing content that your team is already creating. So again, those employee story videos, the testimonials, the Glassdoor reviews, like getting all of that content, the FAQs, like what are the questions the candidates are asking that you've like created this really great section on your career site. All of that can live within the virtual event. And unlike an in-person event where, a candidate may be waiting in one line for one employer, resumes in hand, kind of staring up at the ceiling, at the lights, sweating, waiting, not really doing anything. In a virtual event, it's like this wide open space for them to go explore, to go touch and feel, get exposure to all the different employer brand content that's out there. And the companies that we see that are always doing the best are the ones that spend the time to get their booths prepared beforehand with all of that great content, so that when candidates are coming before the event, during the event, and after the event, because a lot of times these events have a life beyond just when the event happens. They get to really immerse themselves in what you have to offer. And that's like one of I think the greatest parts about this. So number 5. So the recommendation is use video, but be prepared to use chat and audio only, or as well. It shouldn't say only. It's pretty much make sure that your team is prepared to use whatever channel the candidate is comfortable and able to use. We certainly want to make sure that we are as accessible as possible for candidates with different abilities and disabilities, and making sure that if video isn't an option, that we're giving them a text only option, or if text only isn't doable for them, that there's an audio or video option. And so making sure that whatever virtual space that you're in, make sure that your team is prepared to use all of those different options, so that you're giving everybody a fair chance. So Lauren, if you hit forward like 4 times, boom, 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 boom. One more. Yeah. So get a 360 view of your candidates. And so one of the greatest parts about a virtual event that we are told time and time again from our customer base is that it really does provide kind of this really great view of the candidate that isn't one dimensional. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's these 4 points that Lauren helped queue up. So you've got your text-based conversation, which I might remind you also turns into a transcript. So again, if you're thinking about like, virtual versus in person, again, you're probably going to do both at some point in the next year or so. But, all of your conversations in a virtual space, like there is that transcript that becomes this really valuable, high quality data that your team can always go back and reference, something that you don't get in person. You've got the video chat. You've got the registration data that you're asking them, the candidate, before they enter into the event. And then you've also got the resume. And so it's this really complete view of the candidate all in one place, live while you're having this conversation, but also saved for later as you might need to do some additional assessment. So let's say maybe we're on 7 now. A question that we get asked all the time, and this one will be really quick, but I get asked all the time, like, how many folks from our team do we need to staff these virtual events? And that's a great question. So, if you're an RPO that might be staffing events for your clients, or you're an employer that is staffing their own events, we always recommend having at least one person for every 10 signups that signed up for the event. And so if you have 100 candidates that are signing up for your event, you're going to need at least 10 people on your team to be there, to have the meaningful conversations, the high value conversations. Again, this isn't AI. This isn't robotic conversations happening. This is your team having high value conversations with these job seekers. And so you want to make sure that you have the appropriate number of people there to staff those virtual booths. Easy as that. So follow-up strategy number 8 here. Again, I probably don't need to remind this group, but the virtual event is one piece in the overall funnel or overall engagement process that you're having with these candidates. Virtual events are great at quickly getting collecting information, having meaningful conversations, and being able to quickly assess and qualify candidates for that next step. But make sure that before your team enters into that virtual event, well before your team enters into that virtual event, you've got a very clearly articulated, documented strategy for what your team is going to do next. And again, many of these platforms out there today will have options within the platform to easily send a candidate to a hiring manager, schedule an interview with a candidate that you really had a great conversation with, or pipeline for later. That's the other thing about these virtual events, is not every candidate, as you know, is going to be right for moving to the next step, but they also might be great for a role that you have opening up in the future, or maybe they need a couple more years of experience or something else, but you want to keep them engaged. And so pipelining them and using the tools offered to you within the virtual platform is a great way to keep that conversation going, so to say. And I think last one here, targeting, which we've kind of touched upon, but targeting is just something that you should be thinking about with these virtual events. You don't want to just open up a virtual event like to every role that you're hiring for in your organization. You're going to do much better. You're going to have a much more effective event, successful event, if you can start to create themes and targeted event themes, and that's going to attract the right candidates. And so again, tomorrow I alluded to the fact that I'm presenting again with Lockheed Martin on diversity hiring. So Lockheed will do events that are specific to the LGBTQ plus and pride community, and bring their ERG within Lockheed to connect with candidates in that community and have these really meaningful conversations that are specific to like, how is Lockheed supporting that community within Lockheed and what it's like to work there, and talk about jobs, and they get so much better attendance and they drive so many more meaningful conversations that way. So I think that's it for the best practices. Real quick on what to look for in a virtual event platform. Again, being around the space for 8+ years, the caveat here is this is a little biased. I do work for a virtual event platform, but again, I think that the key here is that you want to work with a partner that's thinking about your goals from a higher level, which is, again, I'm guessing in many cases it's driving and supporting recruitment and retention outcomes. And that's really what we think about at Brazen when we partner with our clients. Strong customer service, training, and customer education, so important. This is a technology. It's not one of those things that you just kind of snap your fingers, you turn it on, and you're ready to go. No technology works like that these days. And so having a team that's there, that is going to help you build your events, promote your events, and think about how they're driving those retention and recruitment outcomes. So important. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but the full featured event platform, not just a Zoom call, not just a Teams, really giving you that immersive event experience that has the recruitment marketing tools, the follow-up tools is so important. And then the last two here, thinking about self-service, while it is important to have a partner that is there to help you when you run into issues, you also, in order to be nimble and to move fast, want a tool that you can build on your own. And then lastly, data and privacy and security, also very, very important to be thinking about. So with all that being said, I know I'm already a minute over. I think that for those of you that are able to stick around, I'm able to stick around for a little longer, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. Lauren, I don't know if any questions have come in.
Yeah, they have. Thank you so much, Joe. That was awesome. I enjoyed the platform. We at RPOA have used the platform for our conference last year, and it was so great. We enjoyed it. So it's a great platform, and it's really interesting to see how companies are hiring, especially with my generation, Gen Z, to see how it's switching and evolving. So I have a couple of questions for you, Joe. Have you seen any new trends or best practices emerge with the adoption of virtual events during COVID?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen is just the number of use cases that have popped up when it comes to using a virtual event to engage with either candidates or employees or students. And what I mean by that is I think like traditionally, like a virtual career fair or virtual event in the talent acquisition space was probably the number one use case, that like I have a job and I want to hire someone for that job. But like what we've seen happen is like you can engage with candidates in so many different ways. So whether that means like using a virtual event platform for resume reviews, or like interview tips. And so like it's a virtual event that's not like you're not trying to hire anybody, but you're really trying to build relationships, really strong relationships with candidates, to using a virtual event for onboarding. Again, back to that all remote workforce, like having a way to connect the teams that these new hires are going to be working with. The virtual event has really kind of started to bubble up to the top as a great way to make a first great impression with that new hire. And then, I think anything from like using it for like HR teams for virtual benefits fairs or employee engagement, employee communication, just the options are endless. So it's been really fun to watch.
Yeah, that's great. I have another question from an attendee. Can you speak briefly about how you work with RPO and recruiting partners?
Yeah. So we work with a few RPOs that will use the platform, the Brazen platform, and really they own the setup of the events for their clients, and the RPO owns the promotion, getting and sourcing candidates for those events. And so they do a really fantastic job. They get to keep that relationship with their client, with their recruiting, teams, and provide a really great way for them to, back to that message I gave earlier about how the virtual event is such a great call to action when you put it in front of candidates, because it's so much warmer than the cold, like, hey, come apply to this job, hey, submit your resume. And so the relationship is really owned by the RPO, and they are able to, through the partnership with Brazen, show more value to their clients.
Great. Do we have any other questions? If you would put it in the chat, that would be great. I think I saw a hand raise. Well, great. Well, while I see if anyone has any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and kind of switch gears and just do a quick plug for the RPOA. So we have the RPO, the RPOA, which is a great organization, and we really strive for making RPOA the place to go for anything that's RPO related. So then we have different things such as free resources, monthly newsletters, blogs, etc. And of course, we have live webinars on demand, which is great. You can access that at any time, anywhere. So here are a couple of our webinar programs, and you can access this webinar program today after it's recorded. So you can access that after this taping.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great feature, a great tool. And then so we have a leadership forum that takes place the third Tuesday of each month. So we highly encourage you to come to those. And then we have a shifting to virtual recruitment strategies that takes place on June 15th. That's going to be a great event with ADP. And then we have an RPOA expert panels, and you can see all of these events which are coming up on the upcoming events calendar on RPOA, on the RPOA website. So, and of course, if you have any questions, you can message us. Joe, I think that someone said, I'm reading on the side here, it says candidates who aren't as tech friendly may feel uncomfortable. Do you have anything to say about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly can be an issue for some candidates. I would say that being able to provide the training and the resources to those candidates prior to, so the videos, the how-to guides, answering any questions on the day of the event as well, having kind of a support team there to help candidates is super important, and something that I think some of our clients have done to get ahead of any issues that candidates may have with the technology. And at the same time, I mean, there certainly is a huge technology adoption and acceleration that's gone on over the last year. I think that most of us would, say that we're comfortable texting on our phones or using a video chat on our phone. And I think that a lot of the technologies, when it's related to virtual events, when it gets to the actual conversation, it's not much different than that. But again, I don't want to be insensitive, and there are certainly candidates out there that just it's just not going to come as naturally And so you do want to provide those resources beforehand and the support team during to address any of those problems. So great question.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone tuning in. We have really enjoyed you being here, and we encourage you to come back on June 15th to hear our webinar with ADP. And just as a reminder, this will be available on demand very shortly. So take care, everyone. See you all soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, RPOA.